Hello. Welcome back to HFPod on tour. It is leg 2 of summer 2021 tour, the first tour of 4.0. Very excited to be here. I am Brian Brinkman, as you know, from Osiris Media. I'm a producer on a number of shows here at Osiris, including HFPod on tour, Undermine, 36 from the Vault, so on and so forth. And I'm hanging out here Saturday morning. Very, very, very excited to bring you guys the first recap here of leg 2 of the summer tour. We've got Seth Gordon-Lipkin at White Collar Wook, who's going to be coming on here shortly to talk. Really excited to talk with him. He's at the show. He is at the campground right now, broadcasting live, going to give a full recap of kind of what went down last night. I thought it was a really, really interesting show. I know that there's a bit of debate out there about, the mellow aspect of it, the song selection. I personally loved it, and I have a lot that I want to say about it. I know Seth does too. Before we do that, I want to just remind you all, for the first time in 10 days here, this is HF Pod on tour. We are presented by Shift Genuine Cannabis. You're probably seeing messages everywhere online right now. We are running a contest with Shift Genuine Cannabis to send 2 people to Las Vegas for the October 30th and 31st shows. And if you know anything about Fish, you know that Halloween tends to be a really great show. And the night before the night, that's my favorite kind of Fish show possible. So October 30th, really amazing that that's a part of it. Hotels included, as well as some money towards airfare. You can register for this contest every single day leading up to midnight, the Saturday of Dick's. So 1 week from today, you can register every single day, once a day, so that you're able to potentially win tickets. We are doing a live show on the lot at Dick's. We're getting set up for this. We got some really cool guests. We got a whole awesome thing lined up. Tom's going to be there. A number of other people are going to be there. I'm going to be there. RJ is going to be there, and we're going to announce the winner there. So if you're at Dick's and you enter the contest, there's a chance you could find out live in the moment that you have tickets to Vegas. I also want to just shout out our media partner, Jambase. We love Jambase. There's incredible recaps that go up the morning after each show from Jambase, as well as just great personalities, great jam band content, great music content, amazing people here. And I want to just shout out Osiris ourselves. Welcome back here. This is HF Pod on tour. All right, so I am going to bring on Seth here, and we're going to dive into night 1 of the Gorge, the second ever 3-night run at the Gorge. Pretty amazing. Yeah. Seth, my dude, welcome. How are you?
Great. It's a beautiful day in Gorge, Washington. It's like cool 80 degrees, sunny, not a cloud in the sky. Happy to be here.
Awesome, man. Yeah, this time of year in the Pacific Northwest is just, and obviously, like, the Gorge is located, for anyone who doesn't know, it's in central Washington. It's off the Cascade Coast. Not as much rain, bit more sunshine, bit more dry, barren western environment. But it's really amazing this time of year. You get like those warm days, and you get kind of cool, crisp nights starting around this time. Did it get cold last night?
It got cold and it got windy. So
wow.
Around the middle of set 2, I was like wishing I had longer pair of pants. Yeah, you definitely need a sweater, and it gets cold right after the sun goes down, and until then it's like blistering hot because there's no shade anywhere. But it's awesome. The drive out here, I had no idea. Like, you go from Seattle, you drive through like tons of evergreen forest and mountains, and then all of a sudden you're in the middle of the desert and there's just nothing around you.
Yeah, I went to I went to college in Western Montana, and the drive from Western Montana to Seattle was one that we took often because Seattle was where a lot of great bands would come and play. And it was like, 8 hours away. You'd make it on a Friday night and blast back on Sunday. And driving through that section of central Washington, it feels like the Midwest, but it feels like the West. I don't know. There's something about it that's totally unique to that environment. And when you drive up to the Gorge, it's literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, totally. There's just towns that are nothing but a gas station.
Yeah. So this was your first time. This is your first time at the Gorge. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
And obviously, like a lot, I talked to a ton of people here yesterday, and it seems like 3 out of every 4 people you talk to is their first time here, and they're just trying
Wow.
to cross it off the bucket list.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. I've been there once. I went in 2011, and it's definitely a bucket list venue. I feel like it's the only Red Rocks is on this level. Just and I live here in Denver. Like going to Red Rocks, the special vibe of Red Rocks never really leaves you. But there's just something about seeing fish at the Gorge. It's unlike anything else.
Yeah, you just get to the top of the lawn and just look out on that view over the river, and it's like it totally overtakes everything. There were times I wanted to be watching the lights, and my eyes just drifted over to the scenery in the background. It's kind of hard to keep your eyes off of it.
I'm sure you have it as well. The first time I read the fish book, the Richard Gere kind of coffee table book, there's that one like full page picture of fish playing the Gorge, and it has to be their first run there in 1997. And I remember reading it in like my high school bedroom, like 17 years old, being like, I have to see a concert there someday. And then when I finally did, that walk you're talking about where you walk up the hill and like there's merch tents and there's bathrooms and there's beer, and then you crest over it and it's all right below you. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. And last night was just like today, not a cloud in the sky, totally clear. The sun was going down as we got into the venue. And then as soon as it gets totally dark, like you see so many stars in the sky. I don't think that's something that stood out to me. Unlike any other venue I've been to, like you could just see the Big Dipper was directly above the stage and just like
Wow.
moving over the stage throughout the second set. It was just really beautiful. The natural wonder of it all is just like unbelievable, indescribable.
Well, let's talk about that because that's a really good transition and segue into the show. Um, I was talking with a couple people last night who were not at the show but were watching it, and the same thing was said in various settings that the set list, the performances, the pace of the show could only really happen at the Gorge. And what you're describing, like you're at a concert, you're at a fish concert, which for so many of us, when you're at the fish concert, that is the complete focus. And the Gorge adds another element to it where like the focus is the music, but then you have to kind of stop yourself and be like, if there was no concert going on, I would sit on the side of this mountain and look out and be like, oh my God, how lucky am I to be here, no matter what. But then you have those two things
Yeah.
combined. And the elements of the Gorge seem to really cater to the way that the band performs at the Gorge. I'm curious, kind of your thoughts just from the jump. Did the music sound different to you based on the setting? Did it feel like what you kind of imagined being at the Gorge would be like?
I think there is definitely truth to that. It was like a really laid back and mellow vibe. And I think what like you're kind of saying that is definitely true is that it works there in a way that it wouldn't in Merriweather, which is like my hometown
Totally.
shed. Like there are a lot of venues around the country you go and you want to like totally rock out. And here I think there is something to just like being able to kind of be on this really immaculate lawn looking over this magnificent view and letting that soak in a different way. And I think that really bared true in the second set last night, especially because like there were a lot of mellow songs. Like I feel like there were 4 landing pad vehicles, scattered through the second set, but it's still it worked really well, and the vibe, the feeling in the crowd was just overwhelming positivity. Even if we weren't all like totally raging it out there.
Yeah, it sounded on the webcast like, especially during the really silent moments in What's the Use, Blaze On, and then following it up with a ballad, Life Boy. Like, before we get into the actual like flow of the show, like that to me is a really, when they played Life Boy, like it was so fitting. It was also really risky. And in some cases, you can just completely lose the audience by throwing a ballad in a very slow paced, very patient second set. And listening on the webcast, and I don't know if this was what it was like there, it sounded like nobody was saying a word. And I couldn't even hear like
Yeah.
cheers. It was just like Fish was playing to a silent audience. Did you find on the ground, like, did the pacing of the second set lose the crowd, or were people just locked in and not really yelling because it wasn't a raging set? What was your takeaway?
I think so. Like you mentioned, the Lifeboy transition, and I feel like the transitions were really really fluid throughout the second set. But the Lifeboy one and the What's the Use one into these like kind of calmer moments. Even if you didn't hear like a crowd roaring the way you did when Fish had that false start with Split Open and Melt, like there was genuine excitement all around me, especially for Lifeboy, because I think that's a song a lot of people don't get to hear very often and
Totally.
is really a fan favorite in the way that it can. It's just like such a beautiful tune that that is a really special moment when it does show up in setlist. So I think people were really excited about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I had to figure. I was watching it with my brother last night, and like we just kept saying, you know, this choice right here is not expected in any way. You know, Fish has been doing this tour where they play a song to open the second set and then they play the jam vehicle next. You know, you think of the
Yeah,
Alabama show had evening song followed by Carini. You had More open up that Alpharetta second set, followed by the Massive Tweezers, so on and so forth. They did it, I think, in Deer Creek with ACC Bag to Blaze On. And so they open up the second set with Sigma Oasis, one of my favorite new songs, sounded amazing. And then they go into What's the Use, which is, to your point, that's typically a jam landing pad. You know, that's typically like
right.
the band has jammed for 20 minutes and now we go to What's the Use. But to use What's the Use as the jam vehicle really set the tone of, okay, every song we're going to play is kind of in a different position than we normally would play it or quote should play it. And somehow it works. And I was just like, I wouldn't have picked this song right here, but somehow this song worked. I think we are seeing the remoteness of where Seth is at right now. We're gonna pause here for a second while Seth comes back. He should be back here momentarily. While we are waiting on him, I will just continue to ramble through set 2 of this show. I think that he's coming back right now, but I personally loved this overall set. I thought, as I'm saying here to Seth, like there was an intentionality that I heard last night in the show, regardless of the overall energy. It looks like we got Seth back here. There you are. How's it going, man? I was just saying
Hey,
this is the remote aspect of recording from the Gorge.
yeah, exactly. And so what I was about
Go
to say
ahead.
when I dropped off, like with What's the Use, it felt like even in those lower key moments, they were really trying to experiment a little. And this definitely came through in Camel Walk. But I don't know, I haven't re-listened to any of the show yet. But What's the Use felt really like stretch out and like they explored like even some really interesting corners of that song in beautiful ways. It was like one of the most impactful versions I've seen in a long time. And I think that obviously Camel Walk, when they just decided to go type 2 right after the song itself ended, it showed that they were just in one of those kinds of moods where they didn't need to use the usual platform.
I think as Seth is saying, you know, like they didn't need to utilize the usual platforms to jump off and to experiment last night, and that was a really interesting aspect for me of the second set. And here we go, we got it back. We're here again. Yeah, you were saying that like the usual songs that we would utilize to go into a kind of jam vehicle, to go into some sort of experimentation, were not really on display. And to that point, I want to jump back to set 1 because to me, and I don't know what this was like on the ground for you, it seemed as though Fishman misheard Trey and decided to start playing Split Open and Melt and went, oh shit, what happened here? And then they decided they had to go with it. And that completely changed the trajectory of the show. Did that feel that way from the crowd?
So I didn't realize that it was like Fishman mishearing a cue. I could tell, you heard Fishman hit the drum beat, you heard everyone get really excited. And then, so I guess, like you're saying, Trey was just like, I guess we can't deprive them of it now. And if they had, I think we would have had to riot. It's the only reasonable conclusion. So that did definitely change the feel of the first set for a little.
We're gonna roll with the technical punches here. Seth is, as I noted from the top, Seth is recording here from the campground at the Gorge. So we are in and out of focus, if you will. But hey, there you are, my man. You're good. You're good.
Yeah, time turns elastic. So I thought the split open and melt, though, it really worked, particularly after No Man's Land, because that one, to me, that was like one of the best jams of the night, and I think it's going to get overlooked. So that was early set one. Both split open and melt and No Man's Land were like probably like the hardest raging moments of the show, I'd say.
Yeah. No Man and No Man's Land in the second slot of a show is such a good move. I think back to Dick's 2016 when it was the second song of that run. Like, I don't know, man, that song has a ability to play in like 7 different slots in a show. Like, it could open the second set, it could come midway through the first set, it could open a show, it could, like, I don't think it's ever been an encore, but like, it feels like it could work anywhere. But when they put it as the second song in the overall show, it just seems like they're feeling good. They've done their opener, and now here's that energy, and they just connect completely.
I think that's right, and it's like it's a really groovy tune that can just get people moving and pick up the energy that I think allows them to use weird, unexpected things as openers of shows.
Yeah, as we're talking, like the ability for like No Man and No Man's Land to just like amalgamate within an overall set list, having it as the second song in a show just like adds something to that show and to that set immediately. That is just amazing. I was just expanding on kind of what you were saying there. Like, you're absolutely right. When you add No Man and No Man's Land and like that type of jam to it, it just raises the stakes on the show immediately. Rounding out set one. So there has been some controversy about the way that the band closed out the first set. So you had the second performance of Mike's new song Mole, which went into a really cool jam. You had Shade, you had Alaska, and then you had Golgi. On site, did you feel as though like the set died in any sort of way, energy-wise, or kind of what were your thoughts as those songs were unveiling themselves?
Like for me, that was definitely the point in the show that dragged the most. There were like some highlights even in there. That was my first time hearing Mole.
It sounds like that was Seth's first time hearing Mole. I'll just jump in here really quickly as we wait for Seth to come back. One thing I have said in a couple of different settings, I found the ballads to be really strong this overall tour. Sorry, I was just segueing through our topic here, Seth. I'll just wrap this up and I'll throw it to you really quick.
Before I cut out again, I'll say really quickly, Alaska was really
please
good.
Do.
Surprisingly good.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I don't know if they've played Alaska since the Providence 2019 version, but that version was absolutely incredible. And this, while it didn't go as deep as that version did, like there's definitely a creativity in that song right now that you didn't hear 5-6 years ago. I also like,
and that was really the point I was talking about earlier, where like you could see the stars for the first time in the night, and it was just, that was beautiful.
Yeah, the fusion of that kind of slow jamming in Alaska with the scenery was just amazing. I'll just wrap up kind of what thought that I had. Shade just fit. No, you're good. You're good. We're gonna bring you back here. Shade just like fit this larger theme of kind of this very patient vibe to the overall show, and to me, the ballads, the slower songs have been so well played this tour. I know that you're in and out of service right now, so I don't want to put you in any sort of a bad position, but I just want to ask you, like, looking at set 2, kind of give me like a large kind of overall picture of it.
So, I mean, it opened with Sigma Oasis, and it felt like it was kind of a continuation of that vibe from set one, you know, of like kind of a slower pace, but still like really good execution. And like I was saying earlier, What's the Use was just like a gorgeous rendition. When Camel Walk started playing, I think that's where everyone was like, they haven't had a huge jam vehicle yet. I wonder if this is going to be it. And as soon as they took off right after the song itself concluded, I think that's when, you know, it kind of evolved into a real party the rest of the evening. And like Slave had, I think, the biggest peak of the night, after like really solid versions of both that insane jam of Camel Walk, and I think that's like the first time it's ever been taken out like that. And Chalk Dust was really solid in a short version. And then yeah, Slave to the Trap, like closing it, was just like the perfect exclamation point on the show, and it was just a really interesting vibe for the whole show that I think really worked well in the setting, and with a crowd that was just really excited to be there. I think people got in really early last night, but also just really taking in the setting around them in a way that Fish found a way to really complement in a unique and I think really well executed show.
I totally agree, and I'm, you know, I don't think last night was for everyone, and I totally understand if people wanted a little bit more energy, wanted a little bit more kind of a rock show that was coming out of the first night at the Gorge, first night back, leg two kickoff, that sort of thing. For me personally, the two things that really drew me into this show were number one, I'm a huge fan of like ambient, very mellow, experimental music. Last night I texted like 17 different friends, and I was like, I think that Trey has been listening to Talk's Spirit of Eden for the last 2 weeks, and that's all he wanted to play. And for anyone out there who's listening who has never listened to Talk Spirit of Eden, it is like hearing God broadcasted into your brain. It's one of the greatest records ever, and all of set two sounded like it to me. And you know, so like stylistically, I loved it, but thematically, it's sometimes really hard for them to hold that theme through an entire set, let alone an entire show. You know, sometimes they'll play very mellow music and then they'll be like, okay, we need to raise the stakes and play, you know, Susie, Chalk Dust, Wilson, and set, just so people can go home and have a good time. And it kind of felt like they didn't really care if anyone had a good time. It kind of felt like they were like, this is the theme that we're going to play in, and you are going to be fully absorbed in this. And that takes some balls at this age, and that's a really amazing, like that takes a lot of it's a huge risk, and I love that about it.
Yeah, that's totally right, and I think it was a crowd that it really worked for last night. And I feeling tonight will be a little bit shreddier, a little bit darker, and have some bigger jams. But it was a perfect show in my opinion last night, even if it, you know, the set list, anyone can find their things to quibble with. Not everyone likes every song, but I thought it was just a really beautifully played show, and one that doesn't sound like any other Fish show I've been to. And that's
yeah, as we wait for Seth to come back, yeah, the unique vibe of it, the fact that like that's a kind of show that you'll probably never hear Fish. You haven't heard Fish attempt in a long time. It felt very like late 90s, early 2000s, slightly like 2.0-esque to me. Like you talk about the unique vibe of last night. Like it felt like something from kind of a darker period in Fish's history.
Yeah, and I loved it. I'm excited for 2 more shows tonight. Last thing I'll say, if anyone can find a recording of Soundcheck, the Gorge song is the last song they soundchecked with, just like Trey riffing some dumb lyrics over what was actually a pretty cool guitar riff, and like kind of like an 80s new wave synth pop song. So if people can find a recording of that, highly recommend checking out the Gorge song. And I'm hoping that we get Esther. They sound checked that yesterday.
Oh, amazing. I almost hope they come out
Yeah.
tonight and just open with rock and roll, just to be like, hey, we are still a rock band. Don't forget it. You know?
Yeah.
um, I want to ask you really quickly. The opener was Torn and Frayed. One of the, I think, only eighth
Oh
times they've
yeah,
played
man.
it. Obviously, a tribute to Charlie Watts, the drummer for the Rolling Stones, who passed away earlier this week at the age of 80. What were your kind of thoughts on the opener?
I love that song. It's one of my favorites from their Halloween Son of Exile on Main Street, and I feel like that's one that has been underplayed ever since Halloween '09. So I was really excited to hear it, and as a big Stones fan myself, it was like a really moving moment to for them to start with that. And I just think that's a great tune. That also like it really fit the vibe. You know, you could tell from that song what the vibe of that show is going to be. And it was like rock songs that are going to be a little bit lower tempo, a little bit mellower, but they were determined to crush them. I feel like that is also a fitting tribute to Charlie Watts.
Yeah. Yeah, I always think about Page made a comment around the time of Festival 8 that, and he quoted that song directly. He said, "This is the perfect album for us to play because on stage the band's got problems." And like
Yeah,
the idea that like Fish was looking reflectively at like, you know, the Rolling Stones in 1972, completely strung out, trying to make this record that ended up being, you know, just a timeless classic. In some cases, I don't think that there's a rock record that sounds more like rock and roll than Exile on Main Street. And like hearing Fish play that record and then bring certain songs to the fore, you know, obviously Loving Cup, Let It Loose is one of my favorites that they've played only scattered times since that show. But Torn and Frayed, just
yeah,
like it feels like a Fish song. I love it.
100%, 100%. And I hope they play it again soon. It's the line their ball and nerves on first nights. That's also a fitting thing. They opened the
Totally.
last Mexico before COVID with that too,
Yep.
and or they played it early on, but the first night, and it fits really well and just set the tone so beautifully last
Yeah.
night. I loved everything about it, and the sun's going down over the stage. Like it's just it was perfect. Everything was perfect.
Do you so I've been listening, you mentioned you're a big Stones fan. I've been listening to a lot of Stones obviously since the passing of Charlie Watson. You know, most of my in the past listening to the Stones was like listening to them as a full band, but I've been just listening to the drums a ton lately, and you know just how he drove songs forward and his simple riffs and simple fills. Do you have a favorite Stones record or favorite Stones song?
My favorite Stones song. Oh my God, I that's a really tough question. um, it would definitely come off of Exile on Main Street. That's my favorite album. But if I had to pick
Yeah,
one song, it might be Sweet Virginia. I love that song so much.
it's a great
It's just
song. That's a
beautiful.
great song.
Yeah.
I always go
Now I'm
for
gonna go
Street
throw that
Fighting
on
Man.
my
That
campsite.
like
You know.
there you go.
Oh hell
It's a great
yeah,
album that
that
you can just
song.
like
Yeah,
throw
it
on
gets me
and
hyped.
everyone's into it. Um, well,
Yeah.
Seth, man, I'm so thankful that we're
Thanks so
able to
much.
connect here. Yeah, dude, I really appreciate you hanging through the tech and all of that sort of stuff. You're going tonight, you're going tomorrow. Any thoughts as we move into the next couple of shows?
I'm really hoping to hear Divided Sky this weekend. That's like the only song I'm actually like really dying to hear this weekend. And anything else, I will be happy whatever they play. Whatever they decide to fit with the setting is going to work for me because it's just like being at the Gorge is a dream come true.
I love it. I love it. And Divided Sky is my favorite Fish song. Seeing that at the Gorge, that's got to be like a
Awesome.
religious experience. So, man, I hope that
I'll
you get
report
it.
back.
And there we go. There we go, man. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Hang out, get some rest, stay hydrated, stay in the shade, you know, all that sort of stuff. It's a marathon at the Gorge. It's not a sprint. So
Yeah, man.
enjoy yourself, man. We'll talk here soon.
Thanks for having me. Take it easy.
Yeah, buddy. We'll talk later. All right, guys. Thank you so much for hanging with us. I know that we had a few technical difficulties here, but that's live television. This is show business, man, and we've got people calling in from the Gorge. That's what happens. I appreciate everyone who's hung with us. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this show. We're going to be obviously talking about this on our Tuesday weekly HF Pod on Tour show that will come out in podcast form. But I have a feeling, just depending on how this tour kind of unveils itself, that we're going to be talking about this show a bit. For me, and I don't know, this may be bold, this may be controversial. I have this show as my second favorite of the overall tour, right behind the first night of Deer Creek. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? I don't know. I loved the overall vibe of it, and I'm still kind of elevated after watching it just on the couch last night, knowing that I see this band in less than a week now, and that they're playing this kind of risky and this sort of challenging type of music is really amazing to me. So before I leave you all, two quick messages. I want to give one more shout out here to our media partner, Jambase. Please visit jambase.com for all music news. There's fantastic stuff that comes out of there, and we love working with Jambase. As well as I want to give one more shout out to our presenting sponsor, Shift Genuine Cannabis. Go to shiftcannabis.com every day between now and a week from today, Saturday of Dick's Weekend. You can register for 2 tickets to Fish's October 30th and 31st shows at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm rooting for all of you. I'm rooting for all of you to win this money towards airfare as well as hotel provided. So really amazing prize. Shift Genuine Cannabis. Hey, if you guys are out there and watching at the ranch in in Ridgeway, we love you guys. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for all that you've done to bring back HF Pod. We will be back tomorrow at the same time talking with someone about the second night of the Gorge. I'm curious to see how the band follows last night's up. It'll be interesting. Till then, I am signing off here. Brian Brinkman from Osiris Media. Thank you all for hanging with me here this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever it is that you're watching. And we'll talk here soon. Thanks so much. Take care, guys.